AITA for struggling to want to stay with my spouse after her self-harm attempt. I am struggling to maintain an emotional connection, or desire, to stay with my M31 spouse F29 after her most recent attempt, which she states was an accident that she doesn't remember even trying to do. Context: it's been a pretty toxic relationship from the start, and every red flag in the early days I blindly ignored in the ignorant hope things would one day get better. Years of mental/physical abuse from her, to her cheating, to her self-harm, all lead up to this. I grew up with self-harm in my family, my dad doing so when I was 7, and it ran in his dad's family as well. My mom had her fair share of mental illness and self-harm attempts growing up. A little over 2 years ago she quit her last job because of stress/anxiety. We were in an okay spot for her to take a break from working, so I told her to. I imagine 3 to 6 months off work at most, to be honest. She got diagnosed with depression and anxiety, as well as migraines. She's been through different meds which have been hit or miss, and at this point I realize is more likely due to her inconsistency with taking them as instructed. I let her take a little extra time in the beginning to try to let everything balance out. Afterwards, we agreed she would look for work or school. She has done neither. Last year, I spent a lot of time and effort, and resources, to try to keep her out and exploring and doing different things to try to help get through everything. We went to more concerts than we ever have in a single year, saw so many movies and other shows, traveled, went to conventions. As much and as often as was possible and reasonable to do so. At the time, we also had our old dog, who was 13, and also on anxiety/depression meds. I was, and still am, working 2 full-time jobs to make up for her lack of work. Income-wise, we are comfortable, though it would be nice to go to a single job again to regain some personal time. Throughout last year, and as was common every year either way, she had multiple breakdowns that resulted in any of the following. 1. Self-harm, light cuts on arms etc. 2. Waking me up in the middle of the night yelling at me for anything she could find reason for, leading up to physically grabbing/pushing me, taunting me to hit her, never have, never will. 3. Throwing things. For leaving for long periods. As I reflect on it, these episodes got progressively worse, and when she'd self-harm and try to hide them, the scars had gotten significantly larger/deeper. At some point, mid-December I had a company trip I had to take. The week leading up to that she was complaining of a bad headache, so I told her to schedule an appointment and get to a doc for it. She refused and said it was just like her previous migraine episode and would pass. I left it at that. The days leading up to, she became quite out of character, as if not all there. I was growing concerned, but nevertheless listened to her and her stating it was just her migraine and it would pass. I asked my parents and sister to keep an eye out, and let me know if she gets worse as I was boarding. When I got there, things seemed to progress faster. Mixed signals from family stating she seemed fine, just slightly off, to her texts being completely incoherent. She was up the entire night, documented only by the non-stop texts that were all over the place and near impossible to decipher, so I got the first flight back I could that day. As I was getting on the plane, my sister said she seemed to be pretty off, and while I asked her to go to a doctor she continued to refuse, so my sister called an ambulance for her. When they were there, my sister asked about her meds, and our dog's meds. I stated what they were, and I guess that lined up with whatever blood work they did, stating she mixed her meds with our dog's, which caused her to OD and nearly die. All this, and they released her that night still. When I landed and got back, my parents took her to Walmart, where I met them. She was still clearly not herself, more openly hateful and careless towards me. I couldn't handle it. I almost broke down in tears in the store, and so I asked them to keep her and I'd be back home later. During the period of her coming down from her OD, she was careless, made it clear she didn't want to be with me, would have preferred to go back home to her parents etc. Mid-January, our dog isn't doing well. He is older, of course, but the vet stated it wasn't an old age issue. He wasn't sure what was wrong. Numerous visits, meds to help, and it came down to kidney failure. We rushed him to a specialized hospital an hour away, where they stated the options were to try to save him, but he'd be on dialysis the rest of his life, or let him go. He was tired, not himself, didn't even perk up when he saw us the way he used to. As selfish as I wanted to be to push and just let him go on dialysis, I didn't want him to suffer either, so we let him go that day. I've been torn since. Today he would have been 14. I can't help but feel like she also mixed his meds, which lead to his kidney failure, but we've no clear answer on that. I've been distant. I don't feel safe, and haven't really, the more I think on it, for some time, when I'm around her. She's generally back to her normal, friendly self, and spends time with my family, who also seems to have written everything off as okay. I left on a whim a couple weeks back to get away. I can't stand to be around her, or any of my family, though they did nothing wrong. I just don't have the energy. I hate the dread, feeling like her next breakdown can come any moment, not knowing if it's going to be worse than the last time. I hate the fear of going on a work trip and coming back to her being dead, because I don't know if that's ever going to happen with her or not, or if she's going to get better one day or not. I care about her and her well-being, but I don't know that I love her the same anymore, or that I can continue to carry on with this. AITA for considering divorce from all this? ETA, we've been together for 14 years, married for 12. Update. Just a follow-up to this post. I've been in and out of it. Emotions ranging from feeling guilty, regret, anger, relief. We went on a long drive a while back to talk, and I told her she needs to go back to her parents. I said I can't keep living like this, in fear of another breakdown, in fear of leaving and coming back home to finding her dead. I can't keep waking up throughout the night expecting her to wake up and go on a rampage. She, understandably, cried and tried to reason with me. Said she'd go to therapy, get a job, etc., all the things she's had near 3 years to do to take care of herself while I work multiple jobs to support her and give her the time, space and resources she needs to take care of herself. As much as it hurts, I still believe that deep down she actually wants this to happen, just didn't want to be the one to make the decision. Fast forward to yesterday, she sent a text asking about what to put down on tax forms. She applied to and got a local job. I asked her why she did that, and if our talk meant nothing to her. She responded with, "Of course it did, and that's why I decided I want to stay and work things out with you." That absolutely set me off. As if she didn't listen to a word I said, didn't respect my request or me. How can you convince yourself that that is what needs to happen, when that's what you've had years to do and have made next to no progress? So I sent quite a wall of text explaining how that made me feel, and that if she opted to stay that's fine, and I'll leave. She kept her response short with an, "I get it, I'll turn the job down and leave as soon as possible." My one main request with all this was that she have help getting to her parents, because it's an 18-plus-hour drive that I don't feel comfortable letting her make alone. Maybe I'm wrong for that, but all things considered I want her safe. I told her this again and she stated, "I don't need you to go with me, I'll be fine." So I told her she needs to talk to her parents and brother then, and see if they'll help her. Or do what she wants and go it alone. That would only make my decisions moving forward more clear. That said, my parents were over that evening for dinner. It became clear also that my mom had a hand in her decisions around staying, as well as gave me the hunch that she helped in pulling my wife out of the hospital prematurely. My mom has a history of similar mental health behavior and has ended up in the hospital multiple times from self-harm attempts/thoughts etc. It used to be extremely bad when we were kids, particularly by HS age, to the point of her attempting to jump out of a car multiple times on the highway, to consuming an entire pill bottle, etc. My dad committed self-harm when I was little. I hardly remember him. So I've grown up with these experiences, and I truly do not want to keep living my life this way. Off the tangent, why I believe my mom also had a hand in my wife saying she was getting a job, again, and staying, as opposed to following my request. My mom cried and threw out, "We love you, and we're here for you to support you, but 12 years, and left it at that." She is quite the intense, typical Christian set in her ways, which adds to my belief they've been planning on how to not let me put my foot down on sending her back to her parents. All that said, while she will be getting back to them most likely in the next couple weeks, I can't help but feel like I'm giving up too easily, like I'm not doing enough, doing good enough, and feel guilty about the decision. There is regret setting in, and sadness, but overall numb. So, with this update, AITA for standing my ground on having my wife go back to her parents until she can sort herself out? ETA, before bed last night, she came to tell me she talked to her family. Her brother wasn't sure when he'd be able to get time off. She tried to say, "So if you don't want to go with me, I can take myself, it's fine." Which also set me off, and also confirmed that I was right to have this in text this time, because she once again was trying to twist it to her benefit. I told her not to say that I offered to go with her if they couldn't help her out, and she was the one that told me she doesn't need me to go, and I wasn't going to let her twist it. She'd said something else and tried to spin it around on me again, and I cut it off and said that's the end of the conversation. I'm not playing games and I'm not letting her twist shit again. Needless to say that interaction angered me, and yet this morning I'm back on the feeling guilty side of the fence. Update, her brother will be coming to pick her up this week. Afterwards, I think I'll be working on moving away from everyone myself, as well as working on finding a good therapist to work through my own traumas and issues. It's been a rough year so far with all the ups and downs, and the past couple weeks in particular. Thank you all for the kind words and support. To those concerned I may end up like my father, I appreciate the concern, but I will stand firm in the promise I made to myself growing up, that I would not turn into that. While I agree that my mother likely played some role into that, he was also abusive. I come from quite a line of dysfunctional family, and perhaps this step separating from my spouse is a step in breaking that cycle. Thank you all for your support. It has helped give me some sort of direction to move forward.